Morning to all. Uh, it's really a privilege to be here in this very distinct meeting event. And I would like to thank Zeynep Çelik, Professor Zeynep Çelik, and especially Ararat Şekeryan for the organization of the event and for their invitation. Actually, I don't like to make a presentation sitting and reading still, but I think I have to do this today. Before starting, maybe I can say that, telling about historiography is actually thinking about narratives, certain narratives. And in this age, in this era, we should be cautious about any narrative, any discursive dominance that is not ours. So I will just pinpoint it for the time being and start. To talk about the making of a capital city in its last 100 years is no simple thing. I've been giving talks, joining conferences, holding seats and panel discussions for a long time about the planning and flourishing of the capital city of Turkey, Ankara. I have written quite a few articles and books on the topic, even one recent one with the title Jansen'in Ankara'sı, planlanan ve gerçekleşen, or the Ankara by Jansen as designed and as implemented. It's going to appear by the end of the year. But still, when it comes to speak with a clear-cut frame on its and the Republic's centennial, it's rather difficult to keep it brief, and as a citizen of the city for a lifetime, even more difficult to be not emotional. Ankara, the location of Ankara we know, and the phrases used for Anatolia as a peninsula are in our memory as well. One is, it's considered to be a bridge between East and West. It's the cradle of civilization, main component of Eurasia, and so forth. But the first time Ankara, or the antique Ankara, was seen on a map was on the Tabula Pertungeriana, which was a road map, and it was shown as equal to the size of Antioch as well. Two great large cities on the large Anatolian peninsula they were. And as you know, this painting has been quite famous during the last 3-4 years, as it was brought to the fore by Beckham, a branch of Koç University in Ankara. It was discovered in early 1970s by Semavi Eyice in Rijksmuseum, and it was in the storage area. So Semavi Eyice wrote articles about this and proved that it is the old Ankara. And we know, of course, tourneforts, paintings, etchings, and lastly, the very first map of Ankara is by von Vincke, 1854. These are just reminders, and a picture of Ankara at the turn of the century. To begin at the beginning, In the words of Dylan Thomas, Ankara as the capital was founded on modern grounds. Modern with the meaning that it rested on a program, which the new cadre of politicians and leaders, especially Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, intended and had in mind as part of his foresight. It was in the air that the 624-year-old state or empiredom was changing itself to Istanbul, was moving to an end, and its capital city of 470 years, Constantinople, was changing itself to Istanbul and was clearly losing ground of power. Ankara, quote, had already proved to be the center of the struggle of resistance and the center for the country, unquote, as a candidate of representing the new country during the Turkish independence war the last 4 years. That is between 1919 till 1922. The hesitations about founding a new state, leaving the old and in quote, rotten capital, abolition of the Sultanate and the Caliphate were all wiped away, uncertainty is clear, and the state settled down in the city where the Parliament of the Independence War had congregated 3 years before, on April 23rd, 1920. Almost all steps and development stages were planned on a flexible program before and after the Independence War. In the hasty days of the war, priorities were on the backing of the front, acquiring the quartering and the catering of the army and the back front, and of course, maintaining the public health at large. Wartime background maneuvers in the form of congresses were held in the fields of education and children and women rights as well, for reforming education and procuring human rights were seen as pillars of the modern society. In the making of the city after the war, there came the prudent demand for city planning, for the population had increased during the war, and after the proclamation of the Republic on the 29th of October 1923, it is just 16 days after Ankara was made the capital city, there were signs that housing shortage would peak. The best and easy way to commission an expansion plan was to a firm which was operating in Istanbul for more than a decade. That is Osmanlı Keşfiyat and İnşaat Kumpanyası. By December 1923, the company was given the task by Mehmet Ali Bey, the mayor of Ankara. By May 1924, the first plan was issued. However, the limited parcels around the old city of Ankara, the settlements and vacant land around the Stadal would not suffice the demand. Housing shortage escalating. Another plan was commissioned to the same company for land on the vacant lowlands of Ankara to the south. To activate the development of the plan by March 1925, the parliament passed a law about the expropriation of 400 hectares vacant semi-marshland to the south of the Stadal. So these were the upper left is the 1924 plan, which focused on the outskirts of the Stadal to expand or to create new land to build up. And it was also proposing certain national or nationalistic representational figures that would be housed in the city. There were plazas, the Augustus Temple was there, and it was also recognized by the planner. And the first statue of the leader of the country was offered on a plaza in the city. On the other hand, an association already functioned within the municipality in 1925 to supply rare goods for the new capital, which was done in hardship, was delegated to authority to financially support their members to acquire houses. This was called Memurin Cooperative Şirketi within the municipality. It was an organization, and as would be supported by the visuals I'm sharing, one of the reasons is that, I mean, there were almost no budget for anything. It was after wartime, and people, as well as the administration, was in poverty. And this Memurin Kooperatif Şirketi was delegated to authority to financially support their members to acquire houses. The association with bond can also be considered the first housing cooperative in Turkey. This is a new research find out. To displace the well-known Bahçeli Evler Housing Cooperative, which was designed by Jansen in 1936. Reminding of social organizations, syndicate bonds, state initiatives for social welfare settlements, and private ventures for housing in Europe, especially in Germany and Austria by then, there should have been some kind of know-how transfer. But to our knowledge, it was only at intellectual level, and the stream leading the intellectual was the army, of course. Army, Navy, and the other military schools, where contemporary developments led the way to modernize. Thus, officers and members of this profession proved to be more apt to adopt any change and introduction to a new mindset in the society than any other group or profession. Turkish ambassadors in Germany and Austria, as old allies, along with other European countries, were asked and messaged back about architects and planners who would be suitable to invite to Turkey to plan the cities. Of course, German language was a connecting issue, not as language, but as culture as well, as relying on the quite recent experience of Germany being allies with the Ottoman Empire during the World War I. Thus, the tripartite or three-era planning phases of Ankara started. The Lerner Plans 1924-25 opened up the way to put a new Ankara in vision. They were thus in operation to supply new development parcels for future owners. The Yenişehir Plan or the new city was born in concordance and with the support of the citizens. Of course, inevitably, the high-income bureaucrats, local landlords, deputies, and citizens of similar origin. Both plans and the authority behind them were seeking modern approaches, but unlike the case of the now famous Weissenhof Siedlung in Stuttgart in 1927. They had the same dates, but the citizens and architects from European countries all invested in the planning and design of exemplary modern housing units and environments, as we know. Planning and developing the future was quite a novel practice in late Ottoman state, as we know, and we are informed about the mid-19th century proposals by Moltke, who, upon the request of the Sultan, had offered new urban circulation channels after the big devastating fires in the heart of the historic peninsula of Istanbul in mid-19th century. For the more recent fire-devastated urban lots in the first decades of the 20th century, our company, which is Osmanlı Keşfiyat İnşaat, was operating in Istanbul by full charge. Planning as a practice was not a professional approach driving and orienting the routines and forecasting the planning of cities. The most recent organization in the field of architectural practice was that of Mimar Kemalettin with the Ministry of Vakf or EFKAF. And architectural design, especially urban design and planning, was not the focus of citizens, but rather of the state in the Ottoman period. So it is apparent by now that the Keşfiyat and İnşaat company in Istanbul had hired, both in Istanbul and Bursa and in Ankara, the urban designer Karl Christoph Löher from Berlin. They were working together as a company. The 1925 Löher Plan was successful in terms of solving temporal housing demand, giving the first image to the representational character of the capital city with its parliament. This is the original plan, but there's too much red on the screen. On the screen, unfortunately, so it's not, easily read. This plan gave the first image to the representational character of the capital city with its parliament, ministries, quarter, the city neighborhoods, and their relationship with the old city, the citadel, and the traffic routes and walkways, thus the overall texture of the city. It was by this plan that the national character of the capital city was given. It offered a set of public plazas where the new citizens would gather and entertain the city, which were neither of them were qualities of the old Ottoman, the haphazard foundation or undesigned way. The public plazas, roads happened were left in a more modern conscience. And there arose the backbone of the national capital with emphasis on the construction and representation of the new national state with the Capitol, even sketched for plazas with statues for the leaders of the new regime, as I mentioned, which seemed within his scope of interest. While the new city or the new town as expansion of the old city was being constructed under the premise of the 1925 Löher Plan, in 1927 it was time for an invited plan competition call, to which three well-known European planners were invited. Leon Josely, the French author of the Barcelona expansion plan in 1905, as the winner of a competition. The German planner and academic Joseph Brix, who was well known as the winner of one of the grand prizes in the 1910 Berlin Metropolitan Planning competition with his partner Fritz Gensmer, And thirdly, Hermann Janssen, the other German planner and academic, who had received the other grand prize in the 1910 Berlin Metropolitan Competition. All the three planners were forefront designers who had local and global experience in planning. In about 6 months, the duration of invited competition, the planners did come to Ankara, submitted their plans in 1928, and Professor Hermann Janssen of Berlin, Charlottenburg, was found to be entitled the winner to become the planner of Ankara. Here's the difficulty to keep a pace with reading and with the screen. So I will go with the screen now in time. Of course, the establishment of the Janssen Plan was in the air. For architecture of the city, Janssen introduced the perimeter block in Ankara as a mid-Europe urban tissue character. This necessitated tearing down of some early urban blocks when new routes were introduced to smoothen and enliven urban transport, was most keen about local historic monuments of the city, but of course within the current historic conception of defining what a monument is, and sometimes this would lead to sweeping away historic housing textures surrounding them. So these are just glimpses from the new city of the Lerner period, and the highlights about the competition, the 1928 plan by Janssen, and its proposals about the making of, out of the Stadal, the making of a city crown to organize the city at large, which he successfully realized until 1939. And these are just glimpses, late 40s, early 50s, Ankara. And he had also proposed green belts to preserve the site of the landmark Stadal, but also to make use of the more sustainable, I mean, sustainability was not the word by then, but he had sense for that. And the rise of the Capitol Hill or the Ministry's Quarter, this is around 1970s. And on the left-hand side is 1932 plan. Early 1950s, and that was the third competition in 1954, which Turkish planners won. Unfortunately, the vineyard house areas on the outskirts of the city were open to construction during the expansion of the city, and the city till 1955, 1960, the city of those years lost its identity with the new planning and implementation transactions. In this early decades, several distinguished planners and architects were in practice in and around Ankara. If you ask me, I would say that the first phase, out of the three, the first phase was the most interesting part, because I would rather use transitory years for that phase, or when you search for the housing that was making the Yenişehir area, the new city area, almost each plan reflects the mindset of the architect or the planner and was apt to change, unfortunately, because the changes at the societal level were too drastic in the first 10 years. People had to replan the early houses, divide them, change their facades, and finally, now only 10 of the houses are on site. They are restored and still in use, but we have lost all the remnants of those eras. And this is the early Lörherian Ankara. This is interesting. I will finalize my speech. This is from Kızılay, looking towards Cebeci area, 1927. So houses are still being constructed. And this is 1972. They have already been demolished, giving their place to a third kind of apartment building. Thank you very much.